What's going on, people? This is Mr. Virgo with Future Music, and I'm going to break down how I made Holy Grime with Wiley featuring Devlin.
Man, a part-time, never had beat, but you're on the mic like a bulletproof vest MC. I'm a double, precious, tech MC. Separate hits from this. I was in the shadow.
So this first sound, the brass, it's a custom patch of my own. So basically I've just took a normal brass sound, put it into the NXT in Reason, and I've laid it with another brass. So it's just like my custom sound. A little secret ingredient. So basically, this is like a low-tone synth saw sound. And I've laid it with another brass sound. And I've laid it with another extra brass sound as well. Just to give it that fuller, rich depth. So it's basically 3 sounds in one. So on the next layer, I've laid it with a deeper horn, just to give it that impact. And the device I used in Reason was the NN19. It's a sampler, so this is just a one-shot sample. Basically, I've got my single layer with the combinator in, with the 3 layers in, and this is now a 4th layer. It just gives it that depth and that chunkiness. You know what I mean? So this one is a subtle brass. And this one's got reverb on it. This one's got all the effects on it, just to give it that. So for this reverb, I've used the RV7000. So that's the RV7000 reverb in Reason. That comes standardly. The patch that I use for that is called All First Impression. So basically what I'm trying to create, all these brass sounds in one, I'm trying to mold it into one particular sound, just to give it that dynamics in that. And now I'll start with the bass. So I've used a low tone saw synth to go over the main synth, the sub. So I'll play the low tone one first. That's got a bit of bass to it. The effects I've got on there I'm using is the Scream 4, the Acid preset. So the source of this bass is coming from the 4 device in Reason, and I've got that running through a combinator, which has a distortion effect over it by the name of Acid. So now I'm going to layer it with the sub now. And that's coming from the subtractor in Reason. So if we hear that on top of the brass sounds. The bass just gives it that rich, deep depth. So the next and final sound I'm using for the instruments is an orchestra instrument that is in the NN19. Play it. So I like my beats sounding dramatic. So I'll always try and stick all these orchestra sounds together, brasses, timpanis, cymbals, the whole lot. So with this and the bass, it sounds like this. On the timpanis, I've got a stereo imager just to make it sound fat and wide. So let me solo that on its own. So that's the sound it gives me. Once laid with the bass lines and stuff, it sounds like this. It just gives it that rich dynamics. So I've not got the timpanis following the notes. I've got them in certain places, you see. That's not really a side chain. That is the outboard compressor on the output. So basically, I've got it compressed to a high volume, high ratio, and it gives it that kind of side chainy sound. But it's not necessarily a straight direct side chain in there. Alright, so for the drum beat, I use the re-drum in Reason, which is 10 device outputs for each instrument. So basically, how I started this one, I laid the claps and the kicks I laid the claps together, and then I inputted a kick in there, a deep kick, so it really punches and drives that bass line. Followed with a few hats and a few percussions as well on top of that. So basically, once I make a drum pattern, what I do at the end, I'll adjust the kick right at the end just to tune it with the actual drums, you see. So basically, when I first make it, the kick won't sound exactly like this. It won't sound like that. It'll sound very standard and dry. But then I just pitch it up and down just to tune it to the actual bass, so it literally blends in together. Because if your kick's out or it's a higher pitch, it will not go with the bass, it will clash with the bass. So yeah, I've got reverb on the clap just to give it that dramatic sound. So let me see. So basically, I've laid this clap. It's 2 sounds in one, or 3 in fact. One's your normal 808 clap, and the next one's like a Congo percussion laid on top of that. It just gives it that depth and chunkiness. And then laid on top of that, I've got a cymbal. And with those 3 together, it makes the sickest sound. So basically, yeah, I'll do it through the re-drum, and then I will left click and then copy it to the track. So that's how I do it, really. Or sometimes I might play it in, depending on how I'm feeling on the day, whether I'm lazy or not. Basically, on this channel, I've got a groove. I've got a groove rhythm all over it, so nothing's really synchronized bang on. It's very slack, very groovy sounding, so it's just got that swing to it. So if you hear the hat, it's out of time, but it's in time, if that makes sense. So let me solo that with the drums. So it's bang on sync, but it's not exactly on sync. But it just gives the beat that slackness and that feel to it. The groove of the track, it helps the beat swing more, because I think if everything's more like synchronized on point, it will just sound very robotic. So a lot of groove and a lot of shifting and side shifting, it helps the beat swing. second 8 to the drum beat, I've got like a south side vocal just to build it, give the beat that dynamics. Basically, when I start a beat, I'll do the first 8 and then I will always make it have variation. So the next half of this, I've put the choir sounds in there. So basically, this sound I'm using here is from a sampler refill called Voices of the Apocalypse. And this is one of my special secret ingredients, what I do use on a lot of my beats. So I've applied this choir on the beat, on the second half, just to give it that epicness. So I chose the bells for this next sound on the next half of the choir, just to give the beat that movie kind of feel and more dynamics again. So also on the second half, I put a harsh distortion lead on there, just to give it some variation and to make it build. Basically, it comes as itself, so it's got reverb on there, it's got a bit of delay and chorus, just to make it sound wide and flat. Also distortion, to give it that crunchy sound. So just a high piercing synth, just to cut through the mix. So basically, my tag name is Mr. V, and the sample which I put on the start of every track, it's actually a good friend of mine from school. So one time we've done a track at the studio, he says, shout out to Mr. V. I've cut the Mr. V bit out and it's been my tag ever since. So all I do now is just pitch it up. This is the original. Mr. V. So it's got some distortion on it at the minute. Let's just take that off so you can hear the original sample. Mr. V. So that's the original Mr. V sample. Mr. V. So all I just do is pitch it up. Mr. V. And there you have it. So the intro for this beat, I've made it so subtle to where when it kicks in, it gives it that big impact. So let me play it for you. So I've gone straight in with some orchestra instruments. If you notice, I've got a marching band snare on it, building up. So basically, it's automated from a low point, and the volume's reaching high. So just as it's about to come to the final drop, I cut all the instruments out just to give it that dynamics. Just that cut out just before the impact. Certain sounds what I've used in the track, I've took little ingredients out of it just to put on the start of the intro. So the sounds in the intro are the similar sounds what are on the drop. And for the intro, I've used some stabbing choirs and spaced them out. Thanks guys, thanks for watching. You can check out my website, www.mrvirgoofficial.com. Peace.